In this video, we're going to show you how to reassemble the primary. Okay, here's our new drive belt that we got from Get Lowered Cycles. At this point, I just want to say thanks to Get Lowered Cycles because they really came through with some superior customer service. This was kind of a rush situation. I couldn't even ride the bike, obviously, and contacted them and they said, we will get you your parts out right away. So they got me all the parts for this entire job and mailed them to me. Of course, they do free shipping, so I just want to encourage you to try out Get Lowered Cycles at getlowered.com. They've been a great company to work with. So we're going to take our drive belt now. I'm going to stick it in from the back, like so, and put it on there. And at this point, we're done with installing that portion of the drive belt, and we're ready to put the entire primary back together. All right, now when you do this, you're supposed to replace this seal right here. There we go. I'm gonna pop that out. I've got my new seal here. And you're gonna take some primary fluid when you do this, and you're gonna wipe it around the outer edge of that. And then you're going to push it back in. You can do this with your fingers. Now you're going to want this edge right here, this outer edge, to be flush with this silver ring around the outside when you do this. And then you know that you've got it seated. Actually, it was hurting my finger. I'm just going to take my tool that I use for my primary and push it down until it's flat. There we go. So that seal's replaced. Okay, now we're going to cover the splines with tape. It'll prevent damage to the bearings. When we put this back on, we'll take the tape off, of course. It's just a precautionary measure, so you don't have to end up replacing your bearings because of damage. Okay, next we're going to put our crankcase seal back on, gasket. I'm just going to wipe it real easily down here, make sure there's no residual oil. Then we take some oil, some primary oil, and we're going to wipe this rubber. There's a rubber seal on the inside of this with oil before we put it on. There we go. All right, now when you put this on, it can only go one way. It's got these tabs, and basically you just match the tabs to where they go, and they actually have some little, I guess, spongy things that hold it into place. So you'll put that on next. Okay, now we're going to take a little bit of oil. There's a seal on your starter, and I'm just going to oil that seal up. That way it'll lubricate it so that it'll slide back into the inner primary housing without tearing that seal up. And this is all just in preparation to put the inner primary housing back on. Okay, now you also are going to want to clean where your shift shaft goes through, and then we're going to put some anti-seize lubricant on our shift shaft for when it goes back in there. That'll also help lubricate it for smoother shifting. Okay, so we're going to just take some anti-seize stick here, and we're going to put it inside of, or on the shift pivot pin right there. That'll help lubricate it and prevent it from seizing. A lot of times, if you don't keep that lubricated, it'll start squeaking on you when you're shifting. Okay, there's a lot that has to happen here all at once, so you might need some help. We've got to put the shift pivot pin in there. We've got to lift it up also at the same time, and we've got to get the starter put back into place. There we go. So then we're going to put our 5 sealant bolts back in and tighten that down, and we'll go in reverse, and we'll order, and we'll put our starter in after we get that kind of buckled down. Okay, we'll get our sealant bolts in. We're just getting them started right now. And we're just going to snug these down, and then we'll torque them once we get them all snugged down a little bit. Now, once you start doing this, you're going to want to make sure that it seats properly all the way around. Okay, now we got to torque the ceiling fasteners. There is a specific pattern that you're supposed to follow. It starts here 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You'll need to refer to your service manual for your bike as far as torque specifications go. Mine is 26 to 28 foot-pounds. Okay, also make sure that you take the tape off that you put on there to protect the splines from hurting the bearings inside of the inner primary housing. Okay, now we're going to put our starter back together. It uses blue Loctite on the bolts, and we're going to get them started, snug them up, and then torque them. Okay, and these on my bike are torqued to 22 to 24 foot-pounds. Okay, now we're going to take the whole assembly, drive assembly, and put it back. This can be kind of difficult because it's hard to get the clutch basket splines to meet sometimes. But once you do, there we go. All right, so that part's on. Now we're going to take our sprocket retainer, and we're going to put some oil on the thrust bearing. And we're going to put the thrust bearing on there, then our thrust washer, and then that's going to go back onto our compensator to hold it into place. There we go. Okay, so here's our new bolt. It already comes with the thread lock on it. And all you're going to do is hand tighten this one for now. I'm going to get a wrench on it, but I'm not going to torque it right now. We're just getting it on there in preparation for the final torque. Okay, now we're going to install our clutch main shaft hub nut. So we're going to apply some red Loctite. Not too much in there. Okay, and then we're going to, remember this is reverse threads, so you're going to turn it the reverse direction to get it on there. And then we're just going to hand tighten that as well. It's easier if you put your socket on there once you get it started to hand tighten it. There it is. Okay, now we're going to begin tightening this up. So we're going to start with the compensator with that Torx T70. We're going to start first, and then we're going to do an initial torque of 100 foot-pounds. Hold on. And you're going to need to get your little primary tool in there. Okay, so I've got it set to 100 foot-pounds. There's 100 foot-pounds. Okay, then we're going to loosen it half a turn. So you might want to make a mark, or just remember where half a turn is. I'm going to just use my wrench, and when I get the wrench to the other side, I know I'm half a turn. And you're going to need to get your primary tool in there again. There you go. And half a turn. Okay, then I got to get a different torque wrench. You're going to tighten it, your final tightening, to 175 foot-pounds. So you're going to have pretty good sized torque wrench for that. So you get the torque wrench on there. You're going to need to put your chain primary tool again back on there, or reverse it. There we go. And you're going to need some good leverage for this. Okay, so my little cutting board broke on me, so I went and cut a piece of wood. 175 foot-pounds, guys. There it is. Okay, so I'm set up now for the clutch hub main shaft nut. We've reversed our wood. We're actually turning counterclockwise to tighten this. This is torqued on my bike. You need your service manual for this. 70 to 80 foot-pounds. Okay, now we're going to reinstall our clutch release plate. It was right in there. Now this may be different if you have a bike with a cable clutch instead of a hydraulic. Okay, then we're going to put our retaining ring in. Verifying that it does go all the way in. And it's not, but there it went. There it is. Okay, now we're going to put our primary chain tensioner back in. So we're going to slide it in there. We left that zip tie on. That's going to keep it in place. We're just going to hand tighten them for right now, and then we'll torque them once we get them both seated. Okay, and then torque it to specifications. My bike is 21 to 24 foot-pounds. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to cut our zip tie off. Yep. And we're going to try to work it out. There it goes. Okay, next we're going to put a new gasket on here. Always use a new gasket. And it does have some tabs here which align it and hold it in place for you, both the front and the back. Make sure you clean your cover up real good as well. Set your cover on there. You're going to use some Loctite 243 blue on every bolt. We're going to use a drop of that on each one. I'm going to start at the top one up here, because if I can get that one in first, that will hold the gasket in. There we go. Now it's easier from there. And don't forget your long ones go to the front. Okay, once you get them all just snugged, we're gonna torque them. You need your service manual for your torque specs. My bike is 12 to 13 pounds. There's a pattern here that we're going to follow too. We're going to start down here at this one. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now that's all shown in your service manual as far as the pattern goes to follow. Okay, now we got to fill the primary back up. Since we drained everything, it's not a wet fill, it's a dry fill. So my bike gets 45 fluid ounces. Don't forget to put your drain plug back in. And when you do this, make sure the bike's upright, because it won't hold the 45 ounces being on the jiffy stand without overflowing. Okay, then we'll put our clutch inspection cover back on. And if you need reference, I do have videos on changing your oil. I've got quick reference videos for each component, primary, crankcase, and transmission to refer to. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and put our floorboard back on at this point, since we're working around this area. Don't forget your nut on the back of this one. Okay, now we're going to put our shift linkage or levers back on. Don't forget to put your spacer in there, rubber spacer. I've got my marks from when I took it off to give me an idea of where I had it before. Now when you put the back one on, I know a lot of people put it real low, but if you read about it in service manual, if it's too low and this hits the floorboard, it won't make a good shift, and it can mess up your gear train. So you're going to want to make sure that this rear one is up high enough so that it'll get a full shift down without hitting this floorboard. And also another thing to look for is if you drop your bike, your floorboard rotates up. This way it can fall and it's not going to snap that off. If you've got it too low, it'll just snap that right off if the weight of the bike comes down on it. That completes the process of reassembling the primary. Next we'll move on to part 4, which is the final task to the drive belt series, which is reassembling the rear fork.